his sewing needle, stuck in an 1860 copy of Hannah More's Letters to Macaulay, formerly owned by one Lucy Nelson, who wrote in the book that it was brought to me by sister from Baltimore, September 1860. And people left things behind in their books, pieces of their lives and even of themselves. And I should say that all the pictures I'm going to show you today, unless I say differently, are taken from the circulating collections of the library where I work at the University of Virginia. These are not rare books. They're books that are on the shelves for the students to check out. And that becomes important later because the 19th century book is not rare enough to be special. We need to sort of think about what we mean by special in reference to the 19th century for reasons I'll explain. So anyway, people left things behind in their books, pieces of their lives and even of themselves. For example, this lock of silver hair found here between the pages of the library copy of the works of Lord Byron, published in Philadelphia in 1851. The lock lies next to the Ave Maria stanzas of Don Juan Canto 3. And this brings me back for a moment to Fanny Longfellow, whose death was caused, you remember, as she tried to preserve a lock of her children's hair, and from whose head Longfellow took this tress on the day of her death, July 10, 1861. This is now an important library and envelope dated by Longfellow. We don't know the owner or the preserver of the silver gray lock in 1851 Byron, but it nevertheless gestures to a similar web of human affection and the curiously fragile permanence of the human body. In other books, we find other sort of human residua, like this traced hand on a rear-free end paper of an 1853 copy of the works of Shakespeare, with schoolgirl Miriam Trowbridge's inscription, "Ruthie Whitehead's ugly hand." Oh no, I mean beautiful one. The girls are having fun tracing each other's hands in the back of their school book. This is a Victorian book literally bearing the trace of a Victorian hand, a nice metaphorical illustration of the processes by which books get marked with bodies and tools as they make their way to our libraries for study. Many of us have by now seen similar interventions in the Google scans. Here the hand of a scanning agent captured unwittingly in a page shot of a mid-Victorian novel of the same vintage as the schoolgirl Shakespeare volume. The image of the hand in the 19th century book, Ruthie Whitehead's of the Google scanners, makes visible the somatic process of reading, really the haptic nature of it, calling us to attend to the historical book as a physical and social interface, even as it suggests the presence that remains within books as they move through time. We're left with crosses, erasures, curious marks, deracinated objects, and occasionally legible inscriptions, out of which we may begin to construct the history of 19th century readers and their books. That history is by its nature anecdotal, its forensic base incomplete, and its methods tied inextricably to the romance of the trace. How can digital technologies help us create new humanistic pathways through this material? How can humanists work with digital environments to ensure that printed books not only survive, but emerge into greater light and meaningfulness? And I'm just going to page through some slides now. This is just a random collection of 19th century books of literature taken from circulating stacks all in the library at the University of Virginia where I work. And it reveals that these several examples I've talked about are part of a much larger archive of the history of reading hidden in plain sight on the library shelves. Some of these are more legible than others, some are more evocative, some more banal, yet because they're part of a library collection with a history, that is because they come from a finite set of donors, and each of whom left a paper trail, and all of whom have some connection with the area of the university, they can in part be traced and unfolded as part of the 19th century culture of consumption of the book. And indeed, with the rise of large-scale digital text searching, we can now more easily make connections, find out who these people were. And in this way, the global digital library is enabling us to see further into the past. Such examples as I've shown here suggest that similar and related examples of marking are out there on the shelves of our library, waiting to be found to illuminate our understanding of 19th century culture, 19th century literature and the culture that produced and consumed it. And I'm just going to page through these until I get to it. I'll stop and hold it. I like the doll's pose, antebellum fashion. Drawings of figures, photos, coin rubbings. But the situation is pressurized by larger forces at work in the ecosystem of information as it relates to historical materials. In particular, the Google Books project and other large-scale digitization efforts by commercial entities like Gale Cengage and ProQuest. Each Thursday for the past few years, a large North American van line's moving truck is pulled up to the loading dock of Albany Library, where at UVA, where I work, and gathered into itself rolling shelves full of books. Drawn from the circulating collections and well padded for their journey, these books are headed in their ranks for the Google scanning facility, where they will be digitized and added to the growing Google Books library. This is by now a familiar story with similar events occurring simultaneously at major research libraries in the US and Europe. As of last year, Google had scanned more than 15 million of their estimated 130 million discrete titles in the libraries of the world, and the trucks keep rolling. And already, as you know, powerful resources emerge for searching, reading, and statistical analysis of printed books. And it seems we're actually in an extraordinarily stronger position to study 19th century culture via its published verbal record and to write new English literary histories based on digital searches, collations, and interventions of various kinds. Yet the status of the 19th century book within this changing system is conflicted. The 19th century book in particular is worth focusing on. It's out of copyright, so anything pre-1923 has a particular status, right? It can be put online instantly, you don't have to wait. And everything really before 1800 is already in special collections for the most part. So it's 1800 to 1923, that kind of sweet spot of printing that is at risk. These are the books that are becoming rapidly available in full text via Google. So these books return to Alderman Library on the same trucks the next week, but their journey to the scanning facility has placed them on a different footing within the library and within the system of circulation and preservation that enables their existence. And in short, they're now in a kind of competition with their own surrogates. Our international collections of 19th century material, plentiful, various, out of copyright, medium rare, as it were, and often fragile due to the poor paper, particularly after the 1860s when wood pulp comes in, they are at the center of these negotiations. We're now coming to the end of the 150-year cycle that produced these collections in the first place. From the printing of the books in the 19th century to their acquisition by research libraries as collections got built through the 20th century, frequently via bequests from the grandchildren of the book's original owners. And there's an interesting kind of story of how libraries in the middle part of the 20th century needed to build volume counts. And so they took in as sort of lots of books. And that was right around the time when the Victorian grandmothers were dying off. And so a lot of these collections came on the shelves, sort of unsorted and not deduplicated, if you know what I mean, just sort of put up there. And often then haven't been looked at since because they're not user-friendly for the modern student. They're these old editions. They're sort of sitting there and bearing all of these interesting traces. So what will be the contours of this archive as it emerges from the coming decade of digitization? What's the 19th century going to look like with 2020 vision? I mean, that's the year. We're getting to a point where all these decisions are being made within the next decade. Library collections, or future printed library collections, that will be resolved. The question of what to do with the 19th century books can really only be answered as a function of the evidence that the archive can be said to possess. Even as the 19th century printed record was being produced, people were overwhelmed by its sheer scale. And ever since, we have of necessity relied on partial reading, specialized attention, and representative sampling for our interpretations of the cultures that produced it. We read 20 novels and say something about contemporary culture based on those 20, even though there were hundreds and hundreds each year. And now, with the advent of multi-million text repositories such as Google Books, the Google Books Corvus, or the Hockey Trust Digital Library, or more specifically, and for a fee, ProQuest's C19 database of 23 million 19th century items, or Gail Sengage's ambitious 19th century collections online, which is going to have more and more millions of objects, we're in a position to revise exponentially upward the number of texts that we bring to bear on hypotheses about what they were doing in the past. Algorithmic searching, topic modeling, and text mining can guide us towards new patterns and connections that are only visible through the power of digital processing. Yet such modes of research, for all their potential for provocative illumination, focus pretty much exclusively on the verbal content of abstract models of 19th century printed materials, models themselves that are often vitiated by numerous localized errors as the process gets automated. OCR. So we can learn a lot about historical discourse through digital searches and visualizations, but to understand the complex meaningfulness of 19th century literature and its social and human character, I think we have to attend to the interface, which includes both the hardware of the physical book and the software of the many processes shaping its material forms and formats, its reception and historical frame of reference. Will we be able to do this? And will our students? In January of 2011, the OCLC, that's the Online Computer Library Center, released a report written by Constance Malpas entitled Cloud Sourcing Research Collections, Managing Print in the Mass Digitized Library Environment. That's the phrase I look for, print management, which is sort of a downsizing. It's a way of talking about downsizing. And this report focuses primarily on the Hockey Trust Digital Library as a potential source for academic research library collections. Composed primarily of the library contributed content from the Google Books project, the Hockey Trust is a consolidated digital repository that includes approximately 2.5 million public domain volumes. Actually, it's probably more by now, 3 million. As Malpas states, the Hockey Trust Digital Library represents a potential lot of sense. And Malpass concludes that it is in the interest of all academic libraries that mass digitized collections improve to the degree that low-use print inventory can be retired in favor of increased reliance on digital surrogates. And the emphasis on low use is telling there. That is, the book, it's a user-to-user philosophy about library materials now. The ones that are used will get the resources, the ones that sit will not. And for printed books, and particularly for people who do book history, that's a kind of a frightening metric. Because the whole point is that we don't use these books every day. They just need, there's a reason they need to be there. Anyway, it's clear that the heavyweights of book digitization, OCLC, Gale, ProQuest, JSTOR, Google, and the rest, do not necessarily operate according to the understood best interest of humanities scholars, even as they're doing things that help us along. That is not all digital efforts related to the humanities are created equal, or even gladly welcome. And that's sort of an important thing to calibrate for ourselves, I think, as to what do we want to embrace, what do we want to resist, and how can we do both those things intelligently. There's there tends to be a kind of polarizing conversation among my colleagues in English about digital. Either you're in digital or you're not. Either it's all good and it's some time to cheerlead for the technology, or you are a curmudgeon and you're wedded to print and old-fashioned ideas. And I think both of those are caricatures that need to be dismantled. We need to understand the larger forces at work inside and outside the academy that impact the work we do as scholars. If we don't know what to embrace, what to resist, or even how to enter the conversation, we will be done for. Literally, Google and the rest will do it for us. They will remake the world in their image. And it now seems clear that we humanities scholars need to make the case for the future of library collections, even as we adopt digital technologies to do so. We don't want to just say, let's just save everything. That hasn't gotten us anywhere. But how can we use the digital to actually illuminate this stuff? But forging a vital hybrid print-electronic world for cultural research strikes